and welcome to Reanimated. This is episode 330. Who could have ever guessed that we would do this 330 times? It's also something like our 11th anniversary of doing this podcast. Is that? No, 12th.
Really?
10th or 9th or 10th. Yeah.
Feels just like yesterday, Stuart.
We've been doing it
yesterday
for a minute. Well, those were, as you might know, if you're a longtime listener, the dulcet tones of H.A. Conrad. Hello, coming at us from the East Coast. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Fantastic. Cannot complain. The only thing missing is more iced coffee. I misjudged and I just should have gotten 2 and I didn't. And so now I'm kind of sadly looking at my empty glass, but I'll have to prevail. I'll have to just be able to battle on through. So
one should always double down.
Double down on the iced coffee. I know.
My name is Stuart also, and I'm on the West Coast. And alongside me on the West Coast, a little further north, is Kyle Diaz. Kyle's coming back to us today. Hi, Kyle.
Morning. How are you both doing? Well, I guess you just answered. I'm enjoying the 3-day weekend.
Yeah. It's today is Memorial Day as we record this. So I hope that listeners are also able to, in the US at least, are able to take advantage of a day to handle their shit or, try to put their lives back together, whatever it is we use days off for. Today, we're going to be talking about Doctor Strange and in the Multiverse of Madness. He's in it. And we have a bit of news to cover.
Actually, a lot of news today. It was like it all saved up for this weekend.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was pretty excited to see this first little item. It was quite enjoyable.
Tiny and delightful. And this is from one of my favorite things that comes around I don't even know how often, if it's every year or every 18 months, but Love, Death, and Robots is this anthology animation series that comes out on Netflix every so often. It's the third iteration that just came out like 2 weeks ago. And there's an episode in this season called Night of the Mini Dead. And I threw it in the show notes, and Kyle and HA kindly watched or rewatched it before the podcast so we can have a little bit of a gab about it. So it's shot in this like tilt shift style, which used to be huge. Like when Instagram filters first came out in 2008, everything was tilt shift for a hot minute. And it's kind of using that perspective to tell the story. And I think it's really adorable, which is probably the wrong word because it's also like, a zombie story. But that was my main adjective to take away from it. Kyle, what was your initial impression?
It was adorable because you're at such a remove from the actual gore. It's almost like it reminded me of like those video games that you get advertised about on TikTok, where it's like, come play this like game where all these tiny, knights are fighting all these tiny samurai or something. But it was super adorable and very funny. I love the little tiny squeaky voices that they had for everybody. And when they brought in the Mad Max theme for these like kind of wrecking ball guys coming through, Love, Death, and Robots is one of those things that I struggle with. Is just that like there's so many different avenues for like content these days, and especially Netflix stuff, because they drop it all at once. It just like blips, it just like comes and goes. And so I watched the first anthology of Love, Death, and Robots back in like 3 or 4 years ago. And then I just completely forgot about it. And so when you sent me this, I was like, oh my gosh, they've kept on making this. And there's like 2 more anthologies and little shorts like this. Like I just had no idea that this was even still happening. So now I'm very excited to go back and catch up.
Yeah. HA, what were your impressions?
It's the same thing as Kyle. Like I kind of missed that this was even coming out, and I it's also something I enjoy, but there's just so much content out there. And then you're like, oh my goodness, I'm just missing this whole little thing. I also thought it was adorable. But I always love the detail that they managed to put into this, even from this sort of distance that they put in and the effects. And they get so much across in such a small amount of time that I just really enjoyed it thoroughly. It's definitely an art, and it must have taken so long to do it all.
Yeah.
Like this is like an incredibly complex um little I don't even know what you would call this, diorama. I don't know. It just is and then the little squeaky voices. Awesome as always. And they
Yeah.
go really through the full, like they hit a lot of like different their homages in this are pretty amazing. So I love this.
I will say this
It's
is
yeah.
definitely my favorite way that the zombie apocalypse has ever gotten started. That was hilarious. I'm not going to spoil it for anybody because it deserves to be seen and laughed at.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah. Also, the takeaway from the very end of the episode is also like it's comedic. It's also kind of sad, but it's just like I felt like even though they were just kidding around the entire time, there is like a message here, which is just kind of like, well, what's the fucking point? Which I appreciated. So I'd say if anybody hasn't had a chance to see this, it sounds like Love, Death, and Robots falls off people's radars. Get out there and watch it, especially now that Stranger Things just dropped a new season today, or I don't know when, but I noticed that too.
Stranger Things dropped a thing, but did you see how long the episodes are?
No,
they're like 2 hours a piece.
Oh my God.
It's crazy. It is absolutely insane. But now also explains why it took so long to get it out there. And they are in full-fledged, this is a full-fledged, like big budget show.
Oh yeah.
So I'm gonna be really excited to dig in, but we had considered watching an episode late last night and then realized it was 2 hours, and we were like, well, maybe we'll save that for tonight.
Yeah, God, I just took a look at it. It's only 7 episodes, but all of them are more than an hour long. Yeah.
Yep. So
wow. Okay. Well, that's there's a lot of great stuff out there to dig into, including. Well, there's a new trailer out called by Blumhouse, I believe, for a movie called Unhuman, which is actually coming out. It's kind of like whatever today's equivalent of direct to DVD is, because it's like you can buy it on digital on June 3rd.
Yep.
And so that trailer has a lot of vibes to me of not quite like a ripoff of Zombieland, but it has a similar sort of approach, which is all these like title cards and stuff. Yep. Any impressions from our panel here?
I mean, that's exactly what I thought when I saw the trailer, is that they're riffing a lot on Zombieland, and definitely the tropey, the different factions of like the popular versus nerds, and they even riff off of that in the trailer, like in high school, you know what I mean, like the different cliques and whatnot. And they're definitely taking, they're doing the very like kind of quick takes, and they have the humor spliced in there. But I'm willing to watch it. Let's see. But what concerns me a little bit is that maybe we're seeing the best parts of this in the trailer, which sometimes happens.
We have certainly been burned by that before. Kyle, did you have a chance to check this trailer out?
Yeah, I'm really glad you found this, because I saw it recently and I watched it and I was like, that looks like fun, and that looks like something that Stuart and HA should talk about. And then I forgot the name of the movie entirely, and so I was sitting here about 15 minutes before we were recording today being like, zombie movie 2022, new zombie movie coming out, and I was not finding it anywhere, and I was like, man, I remember that there was some trailer that I watched that looked like fun. So I don't know, I think it looks pretty good, and I think Blumhouse has a reasonably good track record for just like schlocky fun, and then every once in a while they'll do something spectacular. So like, they produced Get Out, they produced all of the Purge and Insidious movies and stuff, which are kind of fun. They did those like Happy Death Day to You movies. I think they're hit or miss, but overall, like when I see Blumhouse, I think it's probably going to be pretty good. It's not like A24 or anything where I know it's going to be spectacular, but it's like I trust that brand. So, you know, I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt. I'm interested in seeing it.
Well, good for Blumhouse that they're building that sort of brand recognition that they've got a Kyle guaranteed audience.
Not a guarantee, but it's a good sign.
I did laugh out loud when the one guy is like, I'm a level 20 raw rogue in D&D. And that's even like, that's kind of a deep cut for even people who know what D&D is, because raw is an acronym that stands for rules as written, which means that he is like a straight edge D&D player. Whoever wrote that line of dialogue is like really going for that audience who knows what that means. Because rules as written is something you use in things like Adventurers League, which is like the official way to play D&D in a organized setting. So wow, nice going there, script writer. This does look like fun. It'll definitely be something that I think we're going to have to approach and talk about, and other things that we are avoiding talking about or approaching.
Yeah. Okay. So I will admit, I can't even watch the trailer for this dang film.
Is this off the table now? Are we not going to be able to do it?
I think I can't, like, even just the stills are like really, and I started to try to, like, I watched a bit of like an earlier trailer, I think, and that was like semi okay, but then the more expanded the trailers have gotten, the less I'm able to watch it. So I just don't know if I can get through this, because it's got my worst fear, which is just like, it's more, to me, this feels more like demonic possession, which what are we
talking about, AJ?
Oh, we are talking about The Sadness, which is a Taiwanese quote unquote zombie film, but it doesn't really feel like a zombie film because they're not mindless. They are intelligent, cunning, and terrifying.
They're always smiling. To me, that's like the most unsettling thing.
That creepy smiling thing. And then there's like stills in this particular article that are like just, and it's a Shudder original. And it keeps getting these headlines like the most brutal zombie movie. And I don't know, like it feels like more the most brutal demonic possession virus movie or something. Anyway, I don't know if I can watch this. The jury is out, but I'm trending towards no on this. I don't know if I can do it. The stills are giving me nightmares. I just can't. And so anyway, but we'll have to, I don't know. Maybe I'll revisit, but right now I don't know. Just watching this freaked me out.
I'm a little off put by it too. You know, this most brutal question mark. I am, not to go too much into current events, but I am definitely in a place where I'm not ready to see children and violence against children. I'm almost never ready for that, but I feel like films are starting to dabble with that more often. Virus 32 had a little kid, and we talked about it last week, and there was a kid who was killed in that movie, but off screen. And I don't know if you guys have seen the first 2 episodes of Obi-Wan, but that came out this week too. And they go back to the Jedi Temple, and they've had to add descriptive text in the on like the the intro, saying like, BT dubs, there's scenes of like a school under attack basically by clone troopers in this episode. It does not even come close to violence against children, but that's a thing in that universe. And I don't think anybody's really ready for any of that shit right now. So it's been, and I would hesitate to go into The Sadness, not knowing what level of brutality they are considering. Like, it
is extraordinarily brutal, and there are a lot of like sexual violence scenes in it, from what I understand, which is also something that I just don't know that I can deal with, aside from the possession thing. And so, I may have to take a pass on this one.
Kyle, have you been tracking this movie at all?
No, I've just been looking at it while you guys have been talking, and I think that except for this article, like if I were just watching the trailer or seeing the stills, I'm not sure I would have clocked it as anything different than just a typical zombie film. So this is maybe a good warning that this might be more than I can handle. I'm a prolific abandoner of media. I if I'm like reading a book and I get to like page 50 and I'm not loving it, I'm like, I'm done. And if I get to a movie and I'm like 10 minutes in and it's just not working for me, I'm done. So, uh, I think that's actually a strength. Like there are some people that I know who are like, once they start something, they have to finish it.
No,
And
I'm kind of in the same camp as you, Kyle. I wouldn't call myself a prolific abandoner, but if things are just kind of like not really drawing me in, I'm like, there's
yeah, I'll just pull the ripcord. Like,
Yeah,
Well, and
I
honestly,
could put
there's
down a book pretty easily. Do you ever walk out of the movies?
I have never walked out of a movie, but I think that's more just because I'm not watching a lot of, like, if I'm going to see a movie in the theater, I'm paying money, I'm pretty sure I'm at least going to be somewhat interested in what it's saying before I go in the door. So
I'd also say that I've read now a few other reviews of this, which there are indeed a lot of violence against children, specifically babies. I don't know if it's on screen or off, like on or off screen, but I'm like, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I
I'm
am
probably
also
gonna
not
take a pass on this.
I'm not a maximalist horror person who like, I don't like to see gore or violence or stuff like that just for the sake of being extreme or whatever. So I don't think this is going to click with me on any level, knowing what I know about it now.
Yeah, so maybe the sadness will never come into our universe, or maybe we'll see.
Maybe we'll leave it to some of our listeners to.
Well, the thing is, if people were saying, hey, this movie is brutal, but it's so amazing, and like it does things with the zombie genre that you've never seen, or it's like says something, or like if it, I'm not really seeing anything just scanning through here that says anything about the actual quality of the film. It's just all about the brutality of the film, and that's the easy part in a way. So if somebody were to write something about how this is saying something interesting and different and moving, or is kind of more than just an exercise in special effects essentially, then that would make me more interested. But I'm not seeing that on the kind of just Googling that I was doing just now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll have to maybe wait for more stuff to come out. But at this point, I'd say it's a pass.
Which is a shame. I don't like to take things off of our table. We've definitely watched a lot of things we shouldn't have. Maybe that's why that's informing some of these decisions. But on this topic, Fear the Walking Dead is back, like it's been back for a few weeks. I have not been interested to watch it at all.
Me neither.
And I don't know that maybe I will, just like idly. I don't think that you and I are ever going to like do a breakdown of episode by episode of that show again, because we've just been so disappointed.
I think we could do like a summary. I would like to at least review like the triumphant return of Ms. Dickinson. But is it Dickinson?
It's Dickens, Kim Dickens.
Sorry, I always say I mess up her in is another actor, but in any case, I would maybe do that, but I don't know that we would do a blow by blow because it's just too terrible at this point.
It's very, very bad. And the news this week is that unsurprisingly, one of the last original cast members, in addition to Coleman Domingo, Alicia Debnam Carey is leaving the show. I will not go into, like, in the article that we'll have in the show notes, there are spoilers for how she leaves and what happened in the most recent episodes, which I haven't seen, but I don't care. Like I went and clicked on that article and I read it knowing that it was going to have spoilers, but I had zero, F's to give. So that kind of speaks to my frame of mind for this show. I don't really care.
Well,
about
and
the
also
plot.
it doesn't really surprise me because of how they sort of were playing, even, and again, we haven't seen the second half, but her presence was not overwhelmingly like, it felt like she was clearly either filming something else or whatever, needed breaks, because she wasn't really on screen a ton.
Oh no, she was in like 2 episodes for the first half of the season. And she wrote, I guess she wrote like a farewell on her social, which was like, I started this show when I was 21. Now I'm 28 and it's time to go do something else. And I'm like, yeah, you probably should have left a couple years ago, honestly. Like when Frank Delane, or was that his name? The guy who played Nick, when he left, you maybe should have hitched your wagon to that too, because honestly, it's just a bad story. Like it's been a badly written story for years. It hasn't done anything for her as an actor, I assume, to stay on that show, unless it was just like really good paychecks.
Oh, I suspect there had to be good paychecks involved, but in any case, I think maybe at some point we'll do a very quick summary of the rest of this, but I don't know that I have it in me yet.
No.
And is this the last part of our?
This is the last piece of news.
So as everybody knows, Walking Dead, the OG is kind of wrapping up, and I know that the area in Georgia has been kind of worried about this and sad about this. And so just because this has brought a lot of business to their area, and it's going to continue because apparently some of the houses that they built for the purposes of the show are now for sale. I don't know what the level of quality of the construction of these houses is, but I can imagine there are some super fans out there that are going to buy them. And then the very funny thing about these articles is that they like make comments that some of the actors actually stayed in the houses during the filming. And I'm like, oh, you're just trying to like, I don't know, market every last, I don't know, every last moment of this, but
the Fox News interview that's in here is pretty hokey and not great. Like the anchor can't stop talking or laughing and guffawing as the dude is explaining what's going on with these houses. Like, could you make a joke about some of the things that happened in these homes? And the guy's like, watch the show, leave me alone. God, fucking annoying.
I know it's pretty ridiculous, but anyway, and
I was impressed that AMC was like, yeah, we're gonna build actual homes, like custom homes that we'll use as sets. And I guess that, if they had people staying in them too, more power to them. The parcels are pretty small.
Yeah, they're tiny.
These homes are right on top of each other. And I don't know that I would want to live on a street where you've seen that neighborhood get destroyed by so many different people.
Well, and I mean, it's not, I don't know, like again, shoddy construction is what I think of immediately. And also what do you do after you get there? I mean, I guess, I don't know. Do you run tours through that town? Can you do that? Like, it just feels a little weird to me, but hey, more power to whoever wants to live on this street, I suppose. But I don't know that I would be doing that.
I bet they're pretty well built just because the scale of the budget that these things operate on is just so huge that, it's not your typical like contractor trying to save cut corners everywhere because it's going like straight into their pocket. Like I'm sure they were, the production budget for this stuff was absolutely massive.
All right. So it was massive, but some of these were built during pandemic times.
No, these were predated. Were these
long before? Because I thought that they said that they had sort of added on because people ended up having to stay in them because of the pandemic. So anyway, I just don't like if they're not intending for people to live in them permanently. I just don't really trust that, no matter what the budget is. But
I just think they got to be a little bit weird somehow, like because movie sets are not usually like livable spaces. So I'm just like, there must be like places where rooms are weirdly big or rooms are weirdly shaped, or there's like
where they had the camera
film through, and like I just think there must be weird stuff about them, but I didn't see anything looking through here that was too strange.
Yeah.
They made an illusion in the interview that the handprints are on the porch. They didn't actually show them, but they were like, check out that one porch, it's there too. For Carl and Judith. But one thing that I think is kind of telling here is that it seems like AMC is pulling up stakes and getting out of Georgia, which they've been there for 11 years. And the next spinoffs, I don't know where they're going to be set. Certainly one is in New York for the Negan and Maggie storyline. We don't know where Carl. We don't know where Carol and Daryl are going to end up on their spinoff, and the tales could be all over the world. But it seems like that long relationship of AMC and Georgia might be over, and that's very fascinating.
I will also say that the amount that these are going for are like, I don't know, around
what do you see?
1 million or so, I think.
Yeah, well, they're custom homes. Yeah. That seems like a lot though for Atlanta.
Yeah. And I will say that you don't have to worry, like the big wall, they're going to take that down. So, I guess some fans were upset about that, but yeah, you can't
How
really
dare you?
like live, can't really, can't, I guess you could if you're really into that, but that just seems like a bad idea to have that up. But,
Wow. Okay. I mean, yeah, $1 million is a lot, but they do have good countertops and
they do.
built-ins.
But I agree, like there's got to be weird things about these houses that are not, for whatever film reasons and all that kind of thing are a little strange.
This one has an elevator,
Hmm.
and probably Chandler Riggs is probably living in the basement of one of them. You got to imagine.
Maybe. I wouldn't be surprised. He can just do a little like drive through every once in a while. So, that's we'll have to I'm curious because they're gonna have to do a follow-up about who like actually bought those houses, and we'll have to, you know.
If you look
But
on Zillow, a lot of these, those are the lot prices,
those
and
are
a
the
lot of
lot
them are
prices, huh?
empty. But then some of them are 700 million seems to be the high water mark. But
Yeah, and there's like 10 houses I think that are up for sale that they
very
for this. So,
interesting.
yeah.
Not going to be going to Sonoya to buy a home, but I'm sure other people will not be able to stay away. Okay. Well, I believe that's all of our zombie news, unless anybody was holding out and has something else to bring up. In which case, hearing none, we can go ahead and talk about Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And I watched this a few weeks ago now, so I'm going to be relying on my memory, as poor as that is, and some of the synopsis from Wikipedia. How was your each of your viewing experiences? HA, where did you see this?
So I saw this at the Nighthawk, which is, similar to like an Alamo Draft House. No talking, no texting, assigned seats, like you have to pick them ahead of time. And it was a weirdly empty theater. So, and you can get, adult beverages if you want and good food and that kind of thing. And so it was a very pleasant experience, actually. I think we were like two of like maybe 8 people in the whole theater.
Okay. And Kyle?
I almost saw this when I was visiting my childhood friend in DC a couple of weeks ago at an Alamo Draft House. And actually, as we were walking into the theater, somebody walking out was like, "You guys seen Doctor Strange? It's so good." And I've never had just like a random accosting with a movie review like that before. Like I would, like we did not know this person. They just like were like, "Those two dudes are seeing a movie. One of his Doctor Strange." But we decided to see Everything Everywhere All at Once instead. So I just saw it 2 days ago here in Seattle at a theater close to my house. And it was a very full theater, and except for some extremely bizarre behavior from some other patrons around me, it was I was surprised at how full the theater was so long after it was released.
You have to describe the bizarre behavior. What were they doing?
So it's like a couple a little older than me. As we're waiting in line for concessions, the guy looks over at me and he sees that I'm wearing a Patagonia jacket, which, to be fair, like 99% of people in Seattle are wearing Patagonia at any given time. And he's like, "Patagonia, ever been there?" And I was like, "No." And he's like, "Do you even know where it is?"
Oh,
And I was
God.
like, "I do. It's in South America, Chile and Argentina." And then he just proceeds to just brag at me about his trip to Patagonia for like 10 minutes while we're waiting for popcorn. And I'm just like, who the fuck are you? And do you do this to everyone that you see in the city wearing Patagonia gear? Because that's a lot of people. And then it turns out that I go in and I find my seat. It's assigned seating, just like your theater. And they sit to my right and in the same row as me. And then some other people show up and they're like, "These are our seats." And the guy is like really grumpy about moving. He knows he's sitting in someone else's seats, or he was like, I guess, just like wanted those seats and thought maybe they would be empty, but he's really grouchy about moving. So he moves to the other side of me. Now he's sitting immediately to my left. He talks loudly throughout all of the trailers in the first about 10 minutes of the movie. And then he just leaves. and his partner stays there for like a half an hour. And then she like realizes, I guess, he's not coming back. So she leaves too. And they left all their food and their beer and everything there and never returned for the whole rest of the movie.
That is really odd.
It was really weird. Oh, and I forgot that while they were moving from one set of seats to the other set of seats, they managed to just spectacularly spill like a liter-sized cup of Coke, like just like so much Coke that they spilled like all over the place and like made a huge mess. So they were just like disaster for human beings who were going through something, I guess. But yeah,
I feel like you got a precursor to this just with the comment about the Patagonia jacket.
It's just like, well, it also wasn't like, oh, I went to this like tiny village called this. It wasn't like useful travel info. It was like, did you know there's penguins there? And I was like, yeah, this is close to Antarctica. Like, why wouldn't there be penguins? Like, it was like totally banal stuff about that part of it was so annoying. I was like, please stop talking to me. I'm at the movies by myself. I come to the movies by myself specifically so that I don't have to talk to any other human beings.
Precisely.
Wait, so I'm taking my experience over yours any day, Kyle. And what about you, Stuart?
So I went and I saw it at a matinee during the week. Took a little time because I didn't want to be in a crowded theater and I didn't want to talk to anybody. I got my assigned seat. It was fine. There was a guy who sat 2 seats away from me who was like yelling all the answers to the trivia questions like out loud, but he's by himself. I'm like, dude, I don't just you don't have to say it out loud. You could say it in your head because you're by yourself and you'll know if you were right or wrong in about 30 seconds. But he piped down when the movie started. So very normal, I would say, movie going experience. It was fine. For having to for going on a weekday in a matinee, it was pretty good.
I will share one thing in that our server, we asked them about the movie and they said, oh, have you seen everything? They were like, oh, have you seen everything everywhere all at once? And I'm like, no, that's on our list. And they were like, well, since you already bought the ticket, it's much better than this film. Which I honestly thought was hilarious. So I wasn't at all bothered and, wouldn't have changed anything, but it just was really funny. So,
okay. Well, so we all went to the theater or the movies. We all saw a movie. For me, it was the first time I've been to the movies in years, I would say.
Same. The first time I can't even remember do you recall what was the last movie you saw in the theaters, Stuart? Because I can't.
No, it's been too long. I'm sure it wasn't anything like mind blowing.
Oh yeah, I've been back going to the movies for 6 or 8 months now on an occasional basis. So it wasn't quite as much of an experience for me. Although I think I shared on the podcast previously how I found Dune to be a very thrilling return to the theaters because that was the first one I saw post pandemic or since COVID started.
Yeah. Well, all that aside, it was got to go to the movies, got to eat some popcorn and not spill Coke, thankfully. And then I sat down and proceeded to watch this film. And very quickly, if I might just share an early impression of mine, I lost the plot. I was at sea. I had no idea what was going on. And I don't know if this is like an old man yelling at clouds sort of thing, or if there's just been like 30 Marvel movies and I can no longer keep them straight. Plus, what if? I definitely had what if in my head. Because there's that whole Doctor Strange episode of What If where Rachel McAdams' character is dead. And I had completely forgotten that he was no longer the Sorcerer Supreme. So for the entire film, I was convinced that they were in a different multiverse than the one that we're familiar with until the very end.
And had you watched WandaVision?
Yes, I'd also seen WandaVision. it also just like, it was days later that I was like, wait, that was our Wanda. Like I was complete like, so I'm sorry ahead of time. Like the most basic elements of this movie were completely eluding me from from the get-go, and I'm sure that I will be struggling to keep up with you two as we continue.
I don't know about that, because having watched WandaVision, I have one really huge gripe with this film, a huge one. But I can see, I do think that there are a ton of storylines going on, and unless you're like really up to date on them, there's definitely things in this that, I also forgot like about that whole thing about him not being the Sorcerer Supreme.
But that
But
was like a throwaway line in the most recent Spider-Man movie, right? Not a throwaway, but it was a line. It was a joke in the because he was blipped, and I had to have somebody explain that to me after the fact.
Then I remembered that, and okay. But anyway, I wasn't lost in this, and I think maybe because I had done a little bit of like, reminding myself and reviewing things before seeing the most recent Spider-Man film. Spider-Man, and I think that's the only reason why I wasn't quite as lost. What about you, Kyle?
I bathe in all things Marvel Cinematic Universe at all times. So
you were fine.
I did some preparatory rewatching. I felt very comfortable and in control. And I think I've talked before about this, but like I just am like so fascinated by what Marvel is doing here, and I don't think it's like any other cinematic experience that has ever been done before. Like there's really like not all the movies are great. In fact, most of the movies are like somewhat mediocre to okay, but the degree of connections between them and the degree to which it rewards you for investing more and more and more of your time, and the baseline level of quality that they maintain, so that it never feels, well, with a couple of exceptions, there is a character in this film, Black Bolt, who was apparently in a TV show that I not only never watched but barely remembered existed.
That was Ensign Mount, like not an insignificant actor too. Yeah.
So he was in Inhumans, which is a TV show that the Marvel Cinematic Universe would mostly like to forget they ever tried to conjure up. But yeah, I had rewatched Doctor Strange, and I had recently seen Spider-Man, and checked out some of the end of WandaVision again before going into this, just because I had a feeling those things would all be relevant.
Well, you understood the assignment then, Kyle, and I clearly didn't. I did not do my homework, and I went in to take the test, and I did not pass the test.
What I will say is that, like Kyle, I'm always usually very impressed with what they do in terms of the MCU and the connections. And in this case, I think they fell down horribly. So I feel like they negated the entire WandaVision moral and story and almost forgot that the whole thing happened. So specifically with regard to her character, I just was really disappointed in this.
They take her character to an insane extreme. Yeah. I mean, and at the end of WandaVision, and I haven't rewatched that, but I remember that having kind of a chill ending where she was persuaded that she was doing something crazy. She kind of backed away from the edge.
That's my point. It's almost like they were relitigating and redoing this entire thing that they had already done.
Yeah. So they just focused on those two kids like to this insane degree.
So all this, and honestly, Stuart, I kind of thought similar to you. I thought maybe this was the reason why this was happening, was that maybe this was a different universe, because I couldn't understand why they were kind of going back over this ground they had already very carefully, I thought, sort of explored. And I don't like the trope of this and the sort of flatness that they played her character in terms of her motivation and this one thing, which, you could see happening, but it just felt like they'd already explored all this in WandaVision very well. And I thought incredibly, I just loved how they ended the series in terms of like where she came out on that. So I was really sort of shocked at this because it felt very ham-handed to me. But um,
I
all
see
right.
Kyle unmuting. Kyle, did you want to weigh in on this one?
Yeah, he does. I understand he might, but I was like honestly kind of disgusted, but go ahead.
I guess I had a different take on specifically the end of WandaVision, which is that I really don't think that Wanda really grappled very strongly with her actions in that series, and the degree to which she had kind of completely mentally broken down was really evident from the very beginning. And that series is lighthearted for the most part, and much of it was played for laughs. But she's been in real delusional, essentially, broken into psychosis territory for since the first moment of that series. And so I didn't have a particularly tough time with this, particularly considering that series ends with her acquiring a book that is so evil that it corrupts everybody who reads it, and encourages them to act in evil ways, which is the Darkhold, which plays a very large role in this film. So I did not have a particularly tough time with her breakdown, and for a variety of reasons, I very, very much enjoyed this film, and so I guess I just had a very different read on it than HA. And Elizabeth Olsen's performance as Scarlet Witch was definitely one of them. I thought that she was absolutely spectacular in the role, and in many ways heartbreaking as her counterpart from the other universe. Very terrifying and brutal, and I just really thought that she knocked it out of the park, and I was on board with where her character went from here, and I thought it was reasonably well set up by the end of WandaVision, which she collapsed that hex and freed the town only very begrudgingly, and did not really seem to me to have grappled with the extent of what she did.
But that's like the whole point, was that she knew that by letting the town go, like Vision, everybody else, that she knew like the pain that she was going to be in. And that was a very deliberate decision. So I feel like this negated that entire thing. And that really, really troubles me. And it especially troubles me just how really two-dimensional they made her character in this, because I really do love her character, and I just didn't really buy it, and so I was kind of pissed during this entire film.
H.A. Conrad sits with fists clenched in the movie theater. I think both of you are correct here. I think you're both making good points, and I had no idea what was going on, so I agree with both of you.
Nice try at peacemaking spirit. I'm cool with people having that opinion. I just was like really disappointed because I think Scarlet Witch is such a cool character, and I honestly was hoping they would give it an out by explaining that this was some kind of different multiverse, a different part of the multiverse, but but anyway, let's get into this. I will say I am a huge fan of Mr. Raimi. So, and I felt like he was definitely present throughout this, but especially during the last part of this film. And I like Evil Dead. I know Stuart has different feelings about some of this and some of the way that this plays, but I always like a good Raimi like jaunt, and I did like the quickness of this, the humor in this. I thought that it was really a lot of fun. Aside from my big gripe.
I think Raimi was apparent. He was evident, right? And in the way that he was moving the camera around in some scenes, the details are getting blurry in the rear view mirror here. But I do recall some shots where I was just like, oh yeah, he's moving the camera like it's the invisible evil presence outside the cabin. Yeah. And then there's Bruce Campbell shows up. You're like, okay. All I think we were missing, and maybe it was in a shot, was the orange car. His classic, whatever the hell it is. But yeah, I definitely was feeling the Raimi, and I thought that like it didn't feel discordant at all to me, even though he has a very different style than many of the other directors who've taken on Marvel or MCU projects. Kyle, were you enjoying his approach?
Yes, and I'm not like a Raimi super fan, especially Evil Dead. I have watched Evil Dead, and I appreciate them for kind of the impact that they've had, but it's not like a movie that I watch on like a regular basis and go back to or anything. But this was definitely what I liked about it was it kind of tied together all of the elements of Raimi's career. He there's a very extended, and the reason we're talking about it on this show, there's a very extended zombie kind of reanimation sequence at the end of this that's very reminiscent of Evil Dead.
Oh, yes.
And Evil Dead 2. He also is a multi-time comic book and superhero director, not just with the 3 Spider-Man films, but also with Darkman, which is a very interesting but also very bad movie from the 90s. So
I don't know what you're talking about. That was an incredible piece of art.
So it kind of like ties together to me his whole filmography, and to some extent, because he's doing superheroes, he's doing zombies, he's doing Dutch angles, he's got jump scares in here. Yeah. Definitely the scariest MCU film. And this phase of Marvel has been kind of hit or miss because they have been letting people do a little bit more stylistically with the films. So, for a long time we were stuck in the kind of Infinity Saga, which was really dominated by the Russo brothers, who directed both of the Captain America movies, Civil War, and the second one, which is
the
called
First Avenger or whatever.
No, the First Avenger is the first one.
Yeah.
It's the one with
Winter Soldier.
Thank you. Yeah. And then both Infinity War and Endgame, and they were really good for that storyline, but they were very bland visually. I think those are some of many of those really had a very kind of dull, murky look to them. And so it's really nice to see somebody with a little bit more visual styling coming in and putting their stamp on things. And so I think this kind of joins Guardians of the Galaxy and Thor Ragnarok by Taika Waititi as like a Marvel movie where the director really was allowed to kind of flex their creative muscles as well. And, they're hitting all the points that Kevin Feige and the rest of the Marvel people need them to hit, but they're getting there, via their own ways. And so it's a very, very Sam Raimi film to me.
Oh yeah. And that's one thing that Nighthawk does that I really love, is that before certain films will come up, they'll do like limited screenings of like classic films. And so they actually had like a showing or like a week where Drag Me to Hell was being played at the theater, which unfortunately I missed because I just didn't realize they were doing it. And there's definitely elements of that and that visualization in this film. Like I felt his influence a lot from the cinematography point of view. And if you haven't seen Drag Me to Hell, it is fun. And despite my aversion to possession and evil curses and things like that, it is really good. I don't know if either of you have ever seen it, but it's like, and it features Justin Long, weirdly enough.
Oh,
he's one of the main characters in it. So anyway, I agree with you, Kyle. I feel like this was sort of I thought it was just fun to watch this from that perspective. And to me, it brought a lot more to the film than we've seen sometimes in the MCU. So.
I'd like to bring up a couple of like standout moments or characters and things like that, if rather than go through the plot, because it's circuitous to say the least. I would say I was really interested in the character America Chavez, played by Xochitl Gomez. I think that she was like a really valuable. I mean, she's a little bit one note in terms of what her powers are at first, but I think there's a lot more to. I don't know anything about her comic book character, but I was also just really happy to see the sort of inclusion that she was there to bring to the universe and to the film. And I liked the way that she and Benedict Cumberbatch kind of got along throughout the film too. And I don't know if you guys enjoyed her part, or if
I liked her a lot. I
Yeah.
thought that she was great. I also thought that the two actors had an enormous amount of chemistry.
Yeah.
So I thought that, and honestly, if they didn't, this would have been a really terrible film to watch. So I really thought that was like one of the best parts of this, and they set it up pretty well even from the beginning. And so that I was really impressed with how this played out, and I thought she was a great character. So, and I also like how she has knowledge that he doesn't, and is kind of like trying to educate him about different things. And this was just like, to me, it was a delight to watch. So I just, and he was excellent, as he always is.
Yeah.
So
He's a class act.
Yeah, he's really grown into that
this
role
role.
too. I remember being a little iffy about him in the first Doctor Strange, but I think in all of his subsequent appearances, he's really found the right mix of arrogance and, you know, kind of wry comedy that fits that character. I liked America Chavez as well. You know, it's a weird thing for me to wish for, because my general my old man yells at cloud thing, Stuart, is that I think movies are too long. Like, where is the 90-minute movie? Like, what happened to it? It was so good. You could start a movie and finish it, you know, like in a reasonable amount of time. It feels like every movie now is 2.5 to 3 hours, which is just ridiculous.
Virus 32, my man. Virus 32.
But I will say this movie was a brisk, like 1 hour 57 minutes, and I could have used another 10 minutes of America developing her powers a little bit, because basically the climax of this movie is essentially a pep talk from, you know, I'm sure we'll talk about this a lot more because it's a pep talk from an unusual source, but a pep talk to her where Doctor Strange is basically just like, you can do it. And she's like, I can't. And he's like, yes, you can. And she's like, oh my God, I just have to punch everything. Yes, I can. And then she just starts like basically kicking ass and taking names. And it was like, oh, that came a little bit out of left field. Like, I could use a little more setup of this, where she has some level of, you know, of development of that. So it's a weird thing for me to wish that they would be longer, but I thought that could be a little
We
longer.
see a little bit of that with her just when, you know, in one part, but agree. I think that they did that a little too swiftly. And within this, you know, I think it could have used a little bit more in certain spots and not in others, but they do manage to cram in an awful lot of little cameos into this whole thing. You know, we like, I don't want to, should we spoil? I guess we can spoil it because it's been out for a while now, but
we're
I mean,
we're spoiling. Don't worry about it.
but I mean, you've got Patrick Stewart in this. You've got John Krasinski in it. Haley Atwell. All these people sort of like jumping in, and you know, I knew about Patrick Stewart and John Krasinski and Haley Atwell, but I was still very psyched to see them nonetheless.
Yeah,
And but I felt like those parts I felt like those parts were harder for me to sort of get my mind around because I didn't fully buy. I would have liked a little bit more in some of those scenes because it just didn't sit completely well with me. You know, and maybe this is just me being more partial to Mr. Charles Xavier, to Dr. Charles Xavier, and not believing that he would be succumb so quickly to such a power. But you know, but overall, I kind of agree with you, Kyle, in that I wish there were parts of this that I wish had kind of developed a little bit more in certain areas. And that one you're describing is definitely one of them.
The section in the alternative Earth that they get stuck on for an extended period in the middle of the film, which is where you're talking about, they meet the Illuminati, who are kind of I would say like all of the top tier superheroes who have not yet appeared in a Marvel movie. So you have Rich Reeds of the Fantastic Four, you have Charles Xavier, you have Black Bolt, you have the Peggy Carter version of Captain Carter, which is a tie back to an episode of What If. And when we talk about the zombie element of this, I want to talk about What If a little bit more, but I thought that was very fascinating little tie-in from that series. And that, especially that scene, there's just a virtuoso scene in the middle of the film where things go very, very wrong for that team, and you realize just how powerful Elizabeth Olsen is, or Scarlet Witch is. And I thought that was, to me, the highlight of the movie. Like just the ease with which she dispatches that team was fabulous. And they can kind of like mealy mouth their way around it a little bit, HA, by saying, oh, that Professor X is not our Professor X, so maybe he's just not as strong or capable because he hasn't been through precisely the same stuff. He's this other version, so he may not have the same powers. But also, comics wise and in the MCU, Wanda Maximoff is extremely powerful.
Oh, no, she definitely is. She definitely is. But especially since they go through all the trouble bringing Dr. Xavier in, I would have just liked a little bit more, just a bit more like tussling with him dragging Wanda out of her little brain box that she's been trapped in, like her little prison there. I just would have liked a slight amount more of that. Because I think it would have, I think it obviously hits home how powerful Scarlet Witch is, but it just, to me, it felt like it would have been nice to have just a tad more on that.
Yeah.
And maybe in this part, which is a little bit of where you see America Chavez's powers, you could have expanded on that more so that it wouldn't have been such a shock at the end, or such a sort of big, complete turnaround at the end. That didn't fully, I don't know that they fully built that.
It's kind of fun for me to think about like what happened on Earth 838 after this. Like they lost their top 5 dudes and ladies, right. Except for Carl Mordo is left alive. As far as we know, we don't see him die. So all they have is a Sorcerer Supreme, and I guess maybe some X-Men. I was talking to a friend who was like, "Oh, I kind of wish, or there'd been a rumor that Tom Cruise was going to show up as their Iron Man. I don't know if you guys heard about that, because he was seen on set." And I was like, I don't know exactly how they would do that, because he can't be Tony Stark, because everybody is still themselves. Like you don't have a different looking Tony Stark, but I guess he could be like Chuck Stark, Tony's cousin. Or they could have got Don Cheadle to come in instead of being War Machine, could have been Iron Man. So they had, obviously, as soon as you get into the multiverse, the options are limitless. I think it was really cool the way that they did the scene, and John Krasinski had an amazing end to his life.
Yeah, I quite like John Krasinski as Reed Richards, and I can't understand why they would introduce him here and then not have him play that role in the upcoming Fantastic Four movie. So
who's playing Reed Richards in that?
It has not been announced yet, but okay. And so it's not him for sure, but I cannot understand why they would introduce him here in that role and then not use him again. So I'm looking forward to that, because I think he did a good job with his limited amount of screen time here, kind of being, sympathetic, but also determined, and then also way too arrogant for his own good.
Yeah, these dudes, they executed their version of Doctor Strange, which is like kind of an insane. They obviously had a reason why they were doing it, but it's something that you can't really imagine our version of our world, our world's heroes doing, except for the fact that now Wanda is one of them, and she was clearly the worst of the entire multiverse potentially. So I guess all things are still options. But I agree that the Illuminati stuff is the highlight of this entire film. It's probably 2/3 of the way through it, but it's a lot of fun. And I would say that the scenes after the Illuminati is handled and Wanda is chasing our little scrappy band of heroes through those tunnels, those were some of the scenes that were used in the trailer. that made me think there were going to be more zombies, that there would be a Wanda zombie because of the way she's limping. There was blood on her face. And the way she was framed in the trailer, I thought she was a zombie, leading to me thinking there were going to be more zombies in this movie than we actually got. So I will say that was like a gripe that I have from trailer to realized film. Did not get all the zombies I wanted. Got half.
Yeah. I also want to, just want to hop back and just talk about the fact, she did dispatch all these people so very easily, including a version of Captain Marvel. So like
that too.
And that Captain Marvel was fantastic. So, and that is,
Maria Rambeau is the character.
But like that, I thought that was she was just played by Lashana Lynch, and that I thought was a really, we've seen Captain Marvel out of this group of people. We've seen Captain Marvel's powers, like just how incredible and how insane they are, and so the fact that she's able to dispatch her so very easily is pretty. Pretty indicative of her level of power and also insanity. But I agree with you, Stuart. I also thought that this was the sort of like, I wasn't sure how I thought they were going to go down the what if path, and this was her zombie sort of emergence somehow. And that clearly is not what they did here.
Yeah, they did a big fake out here, which is, when that what if came out, it was it was almost played with the same kind of tone as the Love and Robots short that we just watched. Like it was very tongue in cheek, right? Like there were moments of it that were kind of like heavy, but also like, nobody was really reacting in a way that they would in a true horror movie. I remember there's like a time when they had to like dispatch a zombified like Peggy Carter or something, and then someone makes a joke like, oh, you got Peggy on you or something like that. And so when this trailer came out, we discussed it on this podcast during one of the episodes of All of Us Are Dead, and the assumption was that the zombies would be coming from the zombie
multiverse.
And that was kind of exciting. They did tie in what if in other ways, but they did not decide to. That's not how they got to the zombies, which I was also a little bit bummed by. So the main way that we get a zombie in this movie is a very much Evil Dead style reanimated corpse kind of thing, and not so much of a brains mindless shuffling kind of thing. And it of course happens with Doctor Strange essentially like warging, to use the Game of Thrones nomenclature, totally. into one of his own corpses that he had brought back from another universe early in the film. So it's kind of like like a Chekhov's corpse that they bury at the beginning of the film and then busts out at the end. And which
I feel like they were signaling this heavily, because I was like, oh, there's a zombie, you know what I mean? Like I kind of knew that's where they were going.
But didn't you think, I was convinced that guy was going to reanimate because of whatever the means of his death. We didn't understand what killed him.
I kind of thought that too, and I was but I was also in agree. Like I was hoping that Kyle's conjecture and our earlier conjecture was going to be like that somehow that they would come out of the zombie multiverse.
Yeah. And
maybe this thing would be involved. I didn't fully call exactly what they were going to do, but then when they did it, I'm like, oh no, you didn't just do that, did you? Oh. But they did. And so that was a little disappointing to me.
Yeah. I thought that the effects of how they went on to use this reanimated version of Doctor Strange, I thought it was pretty smart. It wasn't the way I wanted it to go either, but fine. The way they did it did remind me a little bit of the movie Ghosts. I don't know if you guys have seen that recently, but look, the spirits of the undead trying to drag you to hell. Like, except I feel like in that movie, the special effects that they used were like paper bags.
Yeah.
Do you remember those scenes? Those were hilarious.
I have not seen it in a while, but I know that it's got to be incredibly dated at this point.
They do a similar sort of approach, but then the way that they evolve that is it turns into one of the coolest visuals of this movie is that cloak of spirits that he has.
Oh yeah, and that's so Raimi. That whole thing is very Raimi and there's like Evil Dead, Drag Me to Hell elements, but done with a much better set of skills and technology to make it look as cool as it does.
Yeah, I think the zombie strange sequence at the end here is just fabulous. Like it's so much fun. It's like so bonkers, banana, like, maximalist weird. They've totally stopped trying to explain anything. So like what is the hell? Where are these spirits coming from? They're just like, whatever, go with it. There's magic and witches and all kinds of shit in here. Like they're spirits from somewhere, and they're because of the magic, and they're trying to drag him back down.
Doctor Strange has already kind of introduced this idea of gods, though, with Dormammu in the first movie. Like they live in other planes. They might just be celestials. Like I'm not going to try and go down this rabbit hole, but Doctor Strange has dabbled in this before. Is all I'm going to say. Like with that kind of stuff, the god of whatever he was. More
recently, Moon Knight spent an extended amount of time in the afterlife with some sort of like afterlife-y spirits, and I forget the name of the like hippo god who drives the boat in that
Tarawet.
She alludes to other forms of afterlife that other people guard and stuff like that. So I just figured it was a different version of the afterlife than the one we saw in Moon Knight.
So complicated, the MCU. I can't even. Sorry, Kyle, you were like in the middle of a thought, though. I interjected. Well, like what afterlife? The scene continues. And I just feel like it's like an unlikely battle of wills between Scarlet Witch, who's just like, yeah, okay, I could fight off these spirits of the undead or whatever, and it kind of culminates in that scene that you were talking about earlier, where Zombie Strange is giving America Chavez some advice about how she always took us to the right place every time, even when she didn't know what she was doing. That's all she needs to start punching stars through the universe.
Just has to believe.
I mean, the way that she defeats Scarlet Witch here it's great. Maybe some of you saw it coming. I was like, I don't know, man. Everything they throw at her, she can beat, but she can't beat herself. She clearly does. She beats herself up pretty badly. Mm-hmm. But seeing the kids crying and being rejected by them is enough to flip the switch, I guess. Again, that got flipped at the end of WandaVision is potentially our takeaway.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
I was amused at this part of the film by imagining somebody watching this movie who had not seen WandaVision, because her children are not introduced pre-WandaVision.
Nope.
But the viewership of WandaVision is definitely lower than the viewership of this movie. So there are a bunch of people who are just like
where are these kids?
Where are these kids coming from? I just think they that's the blessing and the curse of what Marvel's doing here. If you fall behind, you get lost, like Stuart.
I've been watching stuff. I just can't remember it all anymore. That's my failure. So I would say, like, my takeaways, other than being confused and lost the entire time, not as much zombie as I wanted. Was there another tie-in to What If that you wanted to, or was it just like the What If zombie episode, Kyle, that you wanted to talk about?
Oh, just that Peggy Carter's version of Captain Carter is also from a different.
Yeah.
Is it from the zombie episode of What If? It might be.
I think it might be.
I thought it was a separate one, because I think it's actually Captain America. Steve Rogers.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. There is a whole different one.
He's in the zombie one.
Yeah.
And I don't remember. I haven't rewatched that one recently enough. So post-credit scenes, I walked out after the first one. I think there might have been another one with Bruce Campbell at the very end, right? That I didn't see.
He just stops punching himself.
Yeah.
Papa Pizza was his name or something.
Yeah, something like that. He makes the pizza balls and he stopped punching himself after several days.
That was actually a pretty funny scene where America is like, yeah, most places don't use money. And he's like, hey, you got to pay for those? So yeah. It was a decently enjoyable film once my head stopped spinning. I don't know, like, yeah, this is going to keep going on, I think, until I don't know when this train is going to stop running, but it's starting to feel pretty unwieldy to me, just in terms of, like we were saying before, the amount of lore that you're expected to know, and the where do Wanda's children come from syndrome of not watching every single spinoff. It's gonna get at some point too top heavy.
Yeah. I think that this is one of the films that if you hadn't, and even if you're a fan and even if you're watching all this stuff, if you didn't do some sort of review before watching this, I agree with Kyle. Like I was also thinking the same thing, because I had done that, and even a couple of spots I was like, oh, I need to go back and look at this again after seeing this, and I thought I had done my prep pretty well. So I can't imagine, I guess a lot of people just would go to it and just kind of roll with it. I don't know, but they're definitely, it does require some research or background to be able to fully understand some of the plot lines, and definitely some of the references.
Yeah.
So I tend to agree that that's got to be the point where it's unwieldy. So I'm just not sure what's going to be next. But
I don't think we're going to get our Marvel Zombies movie. I feel like that opportunity was here and they didn't go for it.
They said they were going to develop it into its own TV series, though, animated TV series. I'm not sure if it's still happening or not. I have a really tough time picturing how that would yield enough for a TV series, but it is apparently coming. But yeah, I enjoyed this film. Sounds like a little bit more than both of you did, but I don't think it's top tier in the MCU. And my main note is more zombies, please.
Oh, I mean, I didn't not enjoy it, Kyle. I did enjoy it, and I thought Benedict Cumberbatch was great. And I think, I like, even when he was appearing in the most recent Spider-Man film, I really loved those scenes with him. And I thought that kind of was fun too. So they talk about the multiverse in that. So it's, I just, I think I was just very disappointed that they didn't do more with the zombie multiverse piece of it, which I truly thought was going to show up in this in a different and better way than it did. But I still enjoyed it, and overall had a fun time at this, despite what the server said. So
Everything Everywhere All at Once was the better movie. The server was correct.
I still have not seen that, so that's on my list. But but I still had fun with this. I love the MCU. This is, to me, I just really love the whole franchise. So I have no real beef with this.
I would say it's also by far the weirder multiverse film. Like,
yeah,
the weirdness meter on this one is like a 8. The weirdness meter on that one is like a 99.
Oh, is this the Michelle Yeoh movie?
Yeah.
And is it set in is it set in Marvel or no?
No, it is not a Marvel film.
Different.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is just about multiple universes collapsing together.
And there's something about googly eyes. I kept seeing this GIF about googly eyes. Okay.
There is something about googly eyes.
And Jamie Lee Curtis is in it. It's got a great cast.
It's really good.
So yeah,
no zombies though.
No zombies. Totally.
That's okay. I'm not a one-trick pony, Kyle. I can branch out. We're gonna do. We should talk about though what we're gonna do next. Those are both June 3rd is it probably will not be Fear the Walking Dead season 7B comes out. Because honestly, if you're who cares? We might just sum it up at one point, but I'm not really that motivated to even sit down and watch it. This has been a lot of fun to go through kind of what is a little off of our beaten path for Reanimated, but like it was still cool, and Sam Raimi does good work. So I appreciate you guys coming on and talking about the Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. And I hope that our listeners can give us a holler and let us know what they think about it on Reanimated PCast at Twitter, reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, and our show notes are online at reanimatedpodcast.com. And I hope everybody is having a safe and productive Memorial Day. And, it's a bit of a somber day for a lot of people, but it's also a day of barbecues and having a good time. And I think that's an interesting mix that's out there right now. So it's good.
Yeah. And thank you everybody for listening and thank you, Kyle, for cameoing. And until next time, ciao.
See, Stuart, after your moving talk might catch you on the flip side. Just seems like too flip.
Well, it's the flip side.
Thank you for having me back. It was a lot of fun.
Anytime. All right. Ciao for now.